I think when it comes to the topic of how powerful Bonnie Bennett is probably one of the most divisive topics in the Vampire Diaries universe. This is mainly because the scaling for her in comparison to other characters in the verse is very inconsistent. She's either made out to be way too weak or way too powerful. Like, I've heard arguments pertaining to her being more powerful than her entire bloodline in season 3 after she broke Esther's Lincoln spell, even though Esther has stated,
"Are the descendants of the witch Ayana. She was a great mentor of mine, and I think it's only fitting that I draw from her bloodline."
So, are you channeling our ancestors?
I draw from the entirety of the Bennett bloodline, living and dead. The connection affords me great power, although it is somewhat difficult to maintain, which is why I require you, mother and daughter, the bloodline made manifest.
She's basically saying that when she actually needs to do something that powerful, she needs both Bonnie and Abby there. So when she actually links all the originals together, she didn't really use all of the power from the Bennett bloodline because she couldn't. So at best, Bonnie will be relative to Esther in season 3, which was something Klaus also believed when he said,
Esther's fighting.
Esther couldn't possibly have this much power unless she's channeling something.
A hotspot.
Get the humans ready. I know where she is.
Which implies that he believes that Bonnie is somewhat on the same level as Esther, or at least not too far from Esther. And just like how she can be overrated, the opposite also tends to happen. In fact, I believe the opposite happens more so often than her being overrated. Like, Bonnie is criminally underrated by the fandom, to the point that you can sense the obvious bias against her because people genuinely can't fathom that she is one of the most powerful witches that has ever existed. Which shouldn't be that hard to get your head around because, like Freya, Bonnie acts as a plot device in the sense that both of them are used to determine whether a villain is beatable or unbeatable. This is evidently more so a problem for Bonnie because the writers made her way too powerful way too quickly. Like, only a few days after knowing about magic, she could somehow turn water into fire. In about a year, she could challenge powerful witches like Esther. Like, Bonnie by the end of the show had only been practicing magic for 9 years, and she went from this to this. But anyways, as I'm only planning on determining just how powerful Bonnie is rather than her entire power development journey, I will only be talking about her in her 3 most powerful extent, being the power of 100 Dead Witches, Expression, and End of Series, that being season 7 and season 8.
Bonnie? You're scaring me here.
In season 2 of the Vampire Diaries, in order to have enough power to kill Klaus, Bonnie had to channel a magic hotspot, in which 100 Bennett witches, along with Emily, died at, which granted her with enough power to be able to kill an original. Now, there is a few misconceptions when it comes to this level of power, as some discredit it by saying Bonnie could only kill Klaus when he's in transition, but that's not entirely true. That was more so to make her job a lot easier, as Elijah was the one that told them that after it was stated multiple times, she possessed enough power to actually kill Klaus. And on top of that, he also didn't let Bonnie be the one to kill Klaus. Instead, he made himself be the one to give him the finishing blow. This is all because Elijah was trying to make Bonnie complete the mission without dying. This is more evident when we actually see that after completing the spell, it didn't disorient Bonnie, nor did she even get a nosebleed. Even after Elijah began contemplating saving Klaus, Bonnie told him that he would kill both of them. Elijah didn't assume she didn't have the power to do it, he just said that she would die in the process. So in short, she definitely had no power to kill an original. The problem is that, well, she is very mortal. Hence, she was incapable of using all that power without dying. Not to mention at that point, she wasn't that skilled at magic. Remember, she had only been practicing magic for like less than a year. Very important, as this level of power is something only 3 other witches had ever been able to reach. That being Hope after she became a tribrid, the Hollow after she was resurrected, and also when she took over Hope's body, and finally Freya after she channeled the Vino and the entire ancestral realm to evolution. Tessa might also be in this conversation due to her rematerializing herself of unknown means, but I think that would put her slightly below this level of power. There's also further instances when witches have been granted this level of power to pull out powerful spells. For example, Esther when she channeled the entire Bennett bloodline, plus Bonnie and Abby to avert all the originals. So Ketsia after she channeled the blood of 3 doppelgangers to actually transfer the anchor from Amara to Bonnie. When it comes to other powerful witches like Dahlia, there really isn't much showings for her, and seeing as Klaus doubted she's powerful enough to kill an original with just her power, I doubt she could, but she would be quite close to that level, or she might be just as powerful. This is because this is a lot of power to wield. Like when Freya took Lucian out, you can see the very visible side effects it had on her, and she's a seasoned witch and a very powerful witch even without channeling. And a lot of people confuse the power of 100 witches dead or alive and the power drawn from the violent deaths of 100 witches. There's a massive difference. Remember, Esther just channeling her death side had enough power to resurrect herself completely, something she couldn't do with her own power, something only a few witches in the verse had been able to do. She was also able to create the indestructible Wild Stake. Bearing in mind, this was Esther channeling only 1 violent death side. Bonnie channeled 101 violent death sides. So all in all, although difficult to pinpoint where exactly she will rank in terms of all the witches in the verse, with a power of 100 dead witches, she will be somewhere in the top 4 in terms of movable power, as in power that isn't only used during a spell, so excluding Ketsia channeling 3 doppelgangers and Esther channeling the entire Bennett bloodline. So basically she's either 2nd, 3rd or 4th. We didn't really get that much time with the power, as she didn't really do anything else that supersedes the feat and statement of being able to overpower the immortality of an original, meaning she would have hit Klaus with power that supersedes the amount used to make him an original.
Hello? Would you be any creepier? Why are we here? You want me to make you truly immortal so that nothing can kill you. To do that, I need to talk to Ketsia, which means I need to lower the veil to the other side. That still doesn't explain why you made me trudge through mud in $500 boots. A few miles that way, 12 hybrids were killed at the Lockwood Cellar. And a few miles that way, 12 humans died at the Young Farm. And this is the site where 12 witches were killed. 13 if you don't get to the point. It's the expression triangle. I need to charge all 3 points and channel the mystical energy from Silas's tombstone. Once that happens, I can drop the veil inside the 3 points, and just long enough to get what I need.
Expression Bonnie is also another very powerful version of hers, and some might even say that after she completed the expression triangle, she had more power than the power of 100 dead witches. There's a good case for this, but I don't think she supersedes the 100 dead witches, although I do believe she's somewhat relative to, or at least on par with that level of power. The reason why a lot of people actually believe that she was more powerful is likely because Bonnie became much more skilled than what she was in season 2, and a lot more confident in her abilities, which is a problem Bonnie faced all throughout the show, as she constantly needs people to reassure her that she possesses more power than she actually believes she does. But due to the constant reassurance by Atticus Shane and later on Silas, her confidence was through the roof, attempting things that literally killed her even after Sheila advised against it, telling her she isn't powerful enough to do what she actually tried to do, but she did it anyways. It's a feast of expression. They're more so minor, like her accidentally setting her living room on fire in her sleep, and she also had one very powerful feat, which is it requiring an entire coven just to keep her on the ground, and they were struggling to even do that. Also, she had more battle feats like healing herself easily or easily putting Cole on his knees in pain, and also doing the same thing to Klaus. However, in Klaus's case, it was from behind, but she was still able to react faster than Klaus after Jeremy invited him in, pinning him on the ground, allowing Elena and Jeremy to escape to the kitchen. She was also able to pull up a barrier and link her to the full moon before Klaus could vamp speed to them. However, these aren't her most powerful feats, more so battle feats. Her most powerful feats came after she completed the expression triangle, like dropping the veil and later on putting it back up, and the most powerful feat she did with expression, which was rematerializing Jeremy's soul, or basically giving his soul a permanent foothold on the mortal plane. This type of resurrection is slightly different to a soul transfer resurrection, because resurrection through rematerializing a soul is vastly more powerful than a simple soul transfer resurrection, and it has only been done a few times in the verse through magic. Like, to get an estimate of just how powerful this is, the few times it has actually been done, it required either channeling Nexus Vorti events, the full power of the ancestors, and the violent death of an original. Like, the only 2 times it was done by raw power was Tessa, who did it for herself using unknown means, and the Hollow when she resurrected Avina after she was granted full access to her full powers after being resurrected. And it was stated she had more power than all of the ancestors put together. This goes to show the sheer amount of power this takes to actually pull off, as the Hollow when she was in her spirit form could only do it after channeling the death of an original, and Bonnie did the same thing, however she died after the spell was completed. It's uncertain why she died, is either the power she used overwhelmed her, killing her instantly, or the moment she touched spirit magic she was killed by the spirit, but very likely she was just greatly overwhelmed by the spell. This means that full expression triangle Bonnie would also be in the top 5 or top 6 most powerful witches in the verse, in terms of walking around power, at least the power that she actually possessed, not like the power that she can regularly use, along with the obviously 3 people that I've actually named before, being Hope, Freya, and the Hollow. And then obviously you have the final 2 being Ketsia and Dahlia. End of series Bonnie is easily the most powerful extent Bonnie got as a character, and probably one of the most powerful beings in the verse. But before we actually get straight to her in season 8, let's first go through the lesser known things that she actually did in season 7, which were insanely powerful that not a lot of people actually remember, which I don't blame you because season 7 was very forgettable. But anyways, the most memorable thing a lot of people noticed she did was a double resurrection, something that required the power of 3 heretics to even pull off one, and Bonnie did it without channeling in one sitting. But this feat pales in comparison to what she accomplished later on sealing the Armory Vault. Now this is typically overlooked due to little emphasis being placed on just how powerful a feat like that is, but a quick context, she broke Lucy's spell of sealing off the vault, and for a spell to stay off for years even after you die, it needs to be anchored or bounded to something, either an object or a being that lasts just as long and or just as powerful. For example, the White Oak Tree, an immortal being, a soul circle, etc. Or you could use a celestial event, as it covers both of these criteria. An example of this was another barrier spell placed on the tomb that sealed the tomb vampires, and that was sealed by a comet.
Powerful spells are bound by something even more powerful. The moon, a comet, a doppelganger. The other side was made 2,000 years ago and it still exists. That means she must have bound it to something that could exist just as long.
Based on a statement made by Virginia St. John, it will place Lucy sealing the vault somewhere in 2013, and in turn around the middle of season 6, all the way to the start of season 7, which aligns perfectly to when the merge happened, which was halfway point in season 6. And the merge was done under a Mercury-Venus conjunction, which very likely is what Lucy used, although it might be a different celestial event, is unknown. It could also be an object, but with an object all you have to do is destroy it, and the vault opens, so it can't really be that. Why exactly is all of this important? Well, Bonnie broke Lucy's spell with our celestial event, meaning that her power at that time was at the level, if not greater than a celestial event in base. Bonnie not only dropped the barrier but also popped a new one around the whole building, and she did both of this after barely having any of her magic left and nearing death because she took Rhaenyra's anti-magic pills, which was slowly killing her. Therefore, Bonnie in season 7 alone is on par to Ketsia, who was also stated that her blood alone is on par to a celestial event, and this was her in base, putting her on par with her level of power when she completed the expression triangle. After Bonnie pulled this off, she lost her powers after becoming a huntress, which she was later cured from. Then in season 8, she became a fully realized psychic. In terms of her psychic side, she wasn't the most powerful, at least not as powerful as the Sirens or Cade, mainly because she isn't as trained as them, but she does possess few very powerful abilities, which paired with her magic makes her very formidable, which are personal dimensional creation, which she accidentally did for Enzo, advanced soul manipulation, meaning the ability to manipulate and move about souls that exist in limbo or her dimension. She also had dimensional mediumship, basically the ability to exist simultaneously in her dimension and the mortal plane. This isn't like when she was the anchor to the other side, it's more so an astral projection into these dimensions. However, she, unlike regular witches, don't need to temporarily die to do this. And finally, she possessed psychic premonitions or partial precognition. Basically, Bonnie can sense events that is going to happen before it actually happens. Although this isn't complete precognition, as she can't do it at will, and this is an ability that she's had since season 1. This is because she partially sensed the impending death of the football coach in season 1 through seeing clues based on the actual location that she actually found him in. However, in season 8, her precognition was a lot more powerful. She wasn't just seeing clues, she was actually seeing a full scene. Like, she was able to see Elena burning in a vision and was able to find the exact place she was, even though she wasn't told anything about her location. Also, as Bonnie believed she was a psychic, she actually had her magic all along. And unbeknownst to her, she was keeping Enzo's spirit tethered to the dimension that she actually owned, with her magic alone. And she was doing this the entire time Enzo was actually there. Something powerful witches, for example Freya, needs a very powerful talisman to actually be able to do. And Bonnie was using no talisman, just raw power. But after she regains her magic is when she starts to do some insane shit. Like 2 really powerful spells, and one being the most powerful spell ever done with magic in the entire verse. I'll start with the weak of the 2, which was reverting the Sleeping Beauty spell Kai placed on Elena, which puts her in a temporary death, counterlinking her life to Bonnie. So if Bonnie dies, she wakes. And obviously Bonnie broke the spell. Now, although the spell doesn't seem that impressive, it's the sheer amount of power that was used to seal the spell, which was Kai's death. And Kai explicitly stated that he rigged it due to the sheer amount of power he has, so that if Bonnie tries to use any workaround, then both of them will die. So to undo the spell, it's less about using loopholes and more so about outright overpowering the spell completely to break it. Meaning that when Bonnie broke it after the Hellfire feat, she possessed more power than the power released by the violent death of Kai after he completed the merge and became the Coven leader. Bearing in mind, this Kai has completely absorbed all of Luke's magic on top of all of Joe's magic, and he became so powerful that he could break out of the prison world even without the Ascendant, something not even Bonnie could even do, even after drinking the calcified blood of Ketsia. And like I said before, when a witch dies violently, they will release way more power than they possessed when they were still alive. So although it's hard to quantify how powerful this makes Bonnie, it's still a ridiculously powerful feat nonetheless. But anyways, onto the most powerful feat Bonnie has ever achieved, and is outright the most powerful feat done through magic. I'm of course referring to the Hellfire feat. This is very powerful and is undisputed the most powerful spell ever done in the verse, and the most powerful feat done by a witch, which is basically Bonnie actually being able to pull the Hellfire that escaped the bell from going outside and pulled it back into the bell, and then pulled it straight down towards her, and then held it there and then pushed it back all the way back to hell, in turn destroying it. But why is this so powerful? Well, just to actually do the first part of the spell, which was just to pull the hellfire back into the bell and then pull it all the way down to her, that required the death of 100 witches to actually pull off, as in the violent deaths of 100 witches. As in the first time hellfire was let loose from the bell, it took the violent deaths of 100 witches to actually push it back in after it only traveled a few meters. Yes, I know it caught them all by surprise, but it still required that amount of power to actually push it in. And Bonnie did the exact same thing from 8 miles away, and she didn't channel the ancestors yet. Now, I'm not saying that Bonnie is more powerful than the power that she had when she channeled the death of 100 witches in season 2, but she would probably be relative to that, and at best will be only slightly lower than that in base. And then obviously eventually Bonnie later on equaled the entire force of hellfire in the full power of it. This was after he had already traveled 7 miles, which was over 1,000 times the distance it traveled for the earlier time that it actually was let loose. Making her holding it there before the spirits even showed up just cements the level of power that she actually had, which, like I said earlier on, should be somewhere around the power of 100 dead witches, if not more. And then obviously she was able to push it back. And now this is where the arguments actually lie, mainly because some people say that she did it on her own, and some people say that she channeled the spirits to pull this off. Either way you try to describe how she actually did it doesn't really matter, because both would make Bonnie out to be very powerful. It's either Bonnie was able to use her psychic abilities to actually pull them all the way back into the mortal realm, or she actually just did it on her own. The reason why it couldn't be the spirits resurrecting themselves to actually meet Bonnie is because there is literally not a single law around that actually happening, and it also wouldn't be able to explain Bonnie being able to see Enzo in that scene and also being able to see Enzo after she temporarily died, because there will be absolutely no explanation for Bonnie actually seeing Enzo at peace or limbo, unless it was through Bonnie's psychic abilities. So it's either Bonnie's psychic abilities could be that powerful that she can connect to dozens, if not hundreds of witches at the same time, simultaneously, something Cade couldn't even do, or she just did it on her own. Not to mention, if she did channel that amount of power, she will be utilizing the full power of that insane power boost that she got without dying. But either way, it doesn't really matter. But all in all, Bonnie in that scene alone, the amount of power that it was shown, whether or not she channeled or she didn't channel, it will make her arguably the second most powerful witch in the verse. So in terms of her overall ranking, Bonnie would be arguably the 5th or 6th most powerful being in the entire verse, and arguably the 2nd most powerful witch in the entire verse. Even if you say she was channeling to actually pull off the Hellfire feat, it still wouldn't matter, because in base, compared to all other witches in base, she will still be 2nd. And if witches were allowed to channel, then she would be the exact same position anyway. So either or, Bonnie would be either 2nd, undoubtedly, or arguably 2nd. But anyways, I did a similar video about Hope, and if you want to know where she ranks, then click on the video that's on screen now.